Welcome, my brothers and sisters. This is Ana Beatriz with Missionaries of God's Love in Tustin, California. I invite you all to sit in a quiet place with your back straight, with your shoulders and neck relaxed. Slowly take in a deep breath. Let God's peace enter your whole body and fill your heart. As you exhale, let God be the one who helps you relax. Let's take a deep breath again while thanking God that He is there to listen to our prayers. Today we are going to meditate on a topic called Life without prayer equals a life of distraction and disappointment, because it always ends in a disappointment. There are those brothers and sisters who fall into darkness and end up getting used to it, to such an extent that he or she prefers it and no longer remembers the light and is not attracted to return to it anymore. Although in their heart they know that the light is good and darkness is evil. And I tell you this because there are people who live in there in darkness and evil and have already gotten used to it. The same thing could be said about living with God or living without God. There are people who get used to living without God. This is very sad, but it's easier for people to get used to living in sin than to live in God's grace. The person gets used to living in that type of environment, surrounded by those friends who pull them into that life of darkness, and unfortunately no longer make an effort to get out of that way of living. These people feel comfortable and actually feel fear to go back to the light, to be able to change their life, to seek a life of cleanliness, to seek a life with God. He or she finds thousands of excuses, which the devil puts into their heads, so that they do not change their bad way of living. Sadly, it is easier to go down than to go up. It is easier to fall into a life of spiritual coldness than to rise to a life of seeking God. This is why Jesus said in Matthew 7, verse 13 and 14, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad and easy to travel is the path that leads the way to destruction and eternal loss, and there are many who enter through it. But small is the gate, and narrow and difficult to travel is the path that leads the way to everlasting life, and only a few find it." That is why, my brothers and sisters, do not ignore the invitation to live in the light, to live with God, to live connected with Him through prayer. I know that many of them have heard this over and over again, but as the saying goes, it goes in through one ear and out the other. Why? Because they don't want to spend that time with God anymore. Or they've never wanted to talk to Him, listen to Him, and spend time alone with Him. And sadly, they have already become accustomed to living without God. It is very, very sad. But my dear brothers and sisters, the darkness of life without God, of life of sin, sooner or later ends up catching up to us. There comes a time when not only does it not make you happy, but it makes you live a life of bitterness. Some people choose to quiet or die out their conscience so as not to think that what they are doing is wrong. They simply get up and continue doing what they do every day. Jesus expresses frustration with the people He invites, these who don't want to listen. Jesus expresses frustration in Matthew 11:16 and subsequent verses. Jesus said, "To what can I compare this generation? They are like children sitting in the marketplace and calling out to others. We played the pipe for you, and you did not dance. We sang a dirge, and you did not mourn. For John came and neither drank nor ate, and you say he has a demon. Then I, the Son of Man, came, eating and drinking, and they say, 'Here is a glutton and a drunkard, a friend of tax collectors and sinners.' But the wisdom of God is proven by his deeds. A tree is known by its fruit." Jesus is showing his frustration in these parables. And with examples, Jesus said, "It doesn't matter that I speak to you. It doesn't matter what I tell you. I have sent you prophets. I have sent you people, teachers, and you ignore them and do not change your lives to God." Jesus came and they did not pay attention to him. And they actually criticized him. The thing is that people criticize in order to avoid listening and accepting that they are wrong. They will brainwash themselves to say the other person is the one that's wrong and not them. They want you to see the other person's faults and not their own. In reality, people criticize others to hide their own sins. Matthew continues by saying, "Then Jesus began to denounce the towns in which most of his miracles had been performed, because they did not repent." This goes for all of us. If God has done miracles for you, he has shown you in the past that he is with you, he has saved you from so much, you have no excuse for now not following God. He has shown you the way, you have heard his word. If you and I do not pay attention to it, then that will be on you and I. Jesus continues, "Woe to you, Chorazin! Woe to you, Bethsaida! For if the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Tyre and Sidon, they would have repented long ago in sackcloth and ashes. But I tell you, it will be more bearable for Tyre and Sidon on the day of judgment than for you. And you, Capernaum, will you be lifted to the heavens? No, you will go down to Hades. For if the miracles that were performed in you had been performed in Sodom, it would have remained to this day. But I tell you that it will be more bearable for Sodom on the day of judgment than for you." And then Jesus said in prayer, "I praise you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, because you have hidden these things from the wise and learned and revealed them to little children." Now, brothers and sisters, I invite you to meditate on today's teaching. Ask yourself, am I living a life in darkness, or is it of light? Or could it be that sometimes I'm in one and sometimes I'm in another? Could it be that I have become accustomed to doing some bad things, have committed some sins because I consider them small? Let's not accept any kind of sin in our lives. So I invite you, my brothers and sisters, to pray and meditate. And I say to you, Lord, speak to me, for your servant is listening.